Hector, the Trojan prince and hero, was widely known for his bravery and strength as a warrior. He was a true leader, and commanded the Trojans and their allies during the Trojan War. Hector's powerful spear and successful counterattacks dealt great damage to the Greek forces. He confronted and slew numerous Greek warriors, including Patroclus, the best friend of the Greek hero Achilles. Despite all of his accomplishments, Hector's fate was tragic. He was ultimately challenged to single combat by the mighty Greek warrior Achilles. But even knowing how formidable Achilles was, Hector still chose to accept the challenge. In a brutal battle, Hector fought with all his might, but was ultimately unable to overcome the unstoppable fury of Achilles. To further humiliate Hector, Achilles dragged his dead body behind his chariot and paraded it around the city of Troy in front of Hector's wife and family. This was a final insult to the once great Trojan hero and prince. Despite his tragic ending, Hector remained a treasured figure in Trojan culture. His bravery and sacrifice in defending his people had made him an admired and respected figure. Even long after the Trojan War had ended, Hector's name continued to be celebrated in legend and myth for centuries. Hector, the brave warrior of Troy, had a heart full of doubt and uncertainty regarding the war with the Greeks. Though he led the Trojan army with his brothers Deiphobus, Helenus and Paris, Hector's fighting skills and prowess were celebrated by both the Greeks and his own people. During the early years of the war, Hector killed the Greek champion Protesilaus in single combat, a prophecy that only turned his name into a legend. Helenus, his brother, encouraged him to challenge any one of the Greek warriors to single combat, which resulted in a duel with Ajax. Although Hector found it hard to pierce Ajax's famous shield, he did manage to draw blood before Apollo intervened, and the battle ended with a draw. After that duel, both armies made a truce to bury the dead, but the Greeks went ahead to build a wall and a ditch around their ships, closely watched over by Zeus. Hector was not just a skilled warrior, he was also a loving husband and father. Before leaving for battle, he made sure to comfort his wife Andromache and his son Astyanax, whom he embraced as he prayed aloud to Zeus for his future success. During one of the battles, Hector tried to rescue his brother Troilus from Achilles, an act of bravery that endeared him even more to his people. However, during another battle, Hector scolded Paris for his reluctance to engage in combat with Menelaus. Though Hector's departure led to further fighting and victory for the Trojans, his family and household mourned knowing he would not return. Even within the ancient Greek world, Hector's legacy endured. During the Trojan War, Zeus was deciding the fate of the two armies and ultimately decided against the Greeks. The Trojans began to push the Greeks towards their camp, close to taking their ships. However, Agamemnon rallied the Greeks to fight back and eventually the Trojans backed off as night fell. The next day, Hector planned to attack the Greek camp and burn their ships. Agamemnon took charge and fought back until he was wounded and forced to leave the field. The Trojans continued to attack and broke down the gate. The battle raged inside the camp with many combats, deaths, and boasts until Hector set a ship afire. The gods had decreed the fall of Troy and all of this was intended to bring Achilles back to the fight. Patroclus disguised himself as Achilles and led the troops to force the Trojans to withdraw. After routing the Trojan army, Hector, with the aid of Apollo and Euphorbus, killed Patroclus. Hector vaunted over the dying Patroclus, who predicted his own death as well. Hector was a Trojan prince and a renowned warrior in Greek mythology. He played a significant role in the infamous Trojan War. One of his most notable feats was stripping Achilles' armor off the fallen Patroclus and using it to rally the Trojans. Hector eventually decided to face Achilles himself in combat outside the gates of Troy. However, upon seeing Achilles' might, Hector initially attempted to flee. He was later deluded by Athena in the disguise of Hector's brother to believe that he could win. Achilles and Hector engaged in a brief struggle, but unfortunately, Achilles emerged as the victor. He pierced Hector's collarbone section using spears provided by Athena. Hector was mortally wounded and lay dying on the battlefield. In his final moments, he pleaded for an honorable funeral, which Achilles initially denied. Nevertheless, King Priam, Hector's father, later pleaded with Achilles to grant his son's body an appropriate burial. Achilles eventually relented and drove Hector's body through the dust to the Danaan camp. But he later allowed King Priam to take the body and perform funeral rites. Even Helen, whose kidnapping prompted the Trojan War in the first place, mourned Hector deeply. He had always been kind to her and protected her from harm. Homer, the legendary Greek poet, concluded his epic poem, the Iliad, by referring to Hector as the breaker of horses. This phrase was a testament to Hector's bravery, skill, and outstanding horsemanship on the battlefield. Hector's legacy continued to live on long after his tragic death.
Do you want to explore more Greek mythology stories? Who do you want to see featured next? Subscribe and leave a comment below to let me know. I'll see you in the next video.